Captain Jiho Kim sat alone in his office at the United Earth Defense Force headquarters. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air system. His eyes were fixed on the strange blue light floating above his desk. The light formed a three-dimensional message, a holographic invitation that had arrived just minutes ago. 5 years had passed since humans first learned they were not alone in the universe. 5 years since the massive ships of the Galactic Council appeared in Earth's sky, and now, this invitation changed everything. Jiho read the message again. The High Council of Galactic Species formally invites Earth to send 5 representatives to the Galactic Combat Academy. This honor is extended in recognition of human military innovation during the Proxima incursion. Transportation will arrive in 7 Earth days. Jiho's hand shook slightly as he pressed the communication button on his desk. General Park, please, come to my office immediately. You need to see this. 10 minutes later, General Park stood beside him, her eyes wide as she read the invitation. Is this real? She asked. It's been confirmed by 3 different departments, Jiho said. The Galactic Council actually wants humans at their elite military school. General Park sat down heavily in the chair across from Jiho's desk. The same council that called us primitive endurance predators when they first contacted us. The ones who refused to share faster-than-light travel technology because they said we weren't mature enough as a species. Jiho nodded. The very same. It seems our performance during the Proxima incursion changed some minds. Both officers fell silent, remembering the attack that had come just 2 years after first contact. The mechanoid ships had appeared without warning near Earth's moon base. Earth's weapons were far less advanced than the invaders, but human soldiers had fought with unexpected tactics. They used the moon's low gravity to their advantage, set traps in the lunar dust, and even reprogrammed some of the enemy machines to fight against their own side. So, General Park said finally, we need to choose 5 officers to represent all of humanity at this academy. I've already been thinking about that, Jiho said. He touched a control on his desk, and 5 personnel files appeared in the air, beside the invitation. These are my recommendations. General Park studied the floating profiles. Captain Jiho Kim, you're recommending yourself? With respect, General, I led the ground forces during the Proxima incursion. I understand how these aliens think, and how they underestimate us. General Park nodded slowly. Fair point. Who else? Major Yunji Park. She's the weapons specialist who modified our lasers to penetrate the mechanoid shields. Yes. And Lieutenant Taeho Song, our best pilot. Commander Hyun Lee, our top strategist. And Specialist Minji Kang, our communications and technology expert. General Park studied the faces floating before her. A solid team. But you understand what you're volunteering for? The Council's message doesn't say how long this training lasts. You could be gone for years. Jiho stood up straight. We all volunteered, the moment we joined the Defense Force, General. If Earth needs us to represent humanity among the stars, we'll do it. 2 days later, the 5 chosen officers gathered in a conference room for their first briefing. Jiho looked at his team as they settled into their seats around the table. They were Earth's best, but would that be enough? Major Yunji Park was tall and carried herself with quiet confidence. Her weapons innovations had saved countless lives during the Proxima attack. Lieutenant Taeho Song was younger, with quick eyes that never seemed to miss any detail. His flying skills were unmatched. Commander Hyun Lee was older than the others, with streaks of gray in his black hair. His strategic mind had helped Earth's forces outsmart the technologically superior mechanoids. Specialist Minji Kang was the youngest of the group, a technology genius who could understand and adapt alien systems faster than anyone. Let's start with what we know about the Galactic Combat Academy, Jiho began, activating the room's display system. A 3-dimensional image of an enormous space station appeared above the table. This is the GCA, he continued. It orbits a neutral star at the center of Council space. Over 300 species send their elite military officers there for training. Until now, humans were considered too primitive to attend. So why the change of heart? Taeho asked, leaning forward to study the rotating image of the station. The Proxima incursion. Minji answered before Jiho could. We were supposed to be easy targets for those mechanoids, but we fought them off with much less advanced technology. Exactly, Jiho said. The council species rely heavily on their technology. When they saw humans using creative tactics and adaptability, it caught their attention. They're still expecting us to fail, Hyun said quietly. The others turned to look at him. Think about it. They've denied us access to their advanced technology for 5 years. Now suddenly they invite us to compete against species that have had this technology for thousands of years? They're setting us up to embarrass ourselves. A heavy silence fell over the room. Jiho knew Hyun was probably right, but he also knew something else. They don't understand humans, he said firmly. Throughout our history, humans have always performed best when underestimated. We adapt, we improvise, we overcome. Those are qualities many of these older species have lost after millennia of technological comfort. Yoonji nodded in agreement. I've studied the data we have on council species. Most evolved in stable environments and developed very specialized abilities. Humans evolved as generalists in a constantly changing environment. That gives us an edge they don't expect. 5 days later, a sleek silver ship descended from the clouds above the Defense Force headquarters. Its surface seemed to flow like liquid metal as it hovered silently above the landing pad. The 5 human officers stood in a line, each wearing the new space-adapted uniform created for their mission, with the Earth insignia prominently displayed on their shoulders. An opening appeared in the side of the alien vessel, and a tall, slender figure emerged. The alien had blue-tinted skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. 2 large, multifaceted eyes dominated its face, and it moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost like dancing. I am Transport Officer Linar of the Galactic Council, the alien said, its words translated by the small device at its throat. I will convey the Earth delegation to the Academy. Jiho stepped forward. We are ready, Transport Officer. Before boarding, Jiho turned for one last look at Earth, the blue and green planet that had shaped humanity's fighting spirit. Whatever waited for them at the Academy, they would face it with the unique strength of their species. As the transport ship rose through the atmosphere, Minji pressed her hand against a viewport, watching Earth grow smaller below them. They have no idea what they're in for, she said softly. Taiho grinned. No, they don't. Humans are coming to the Galactic Combat Academy. The ship accelerated, and Earth vanished as they entered the faster-than-light travel that would carry them to their new challenge, and humanity's first real chance to prove itself among the stars. They're expecting us to fail, Jiho said to his team as stars streaked past the viewports. But they don't understand what humans are capable of when we're underestimated. The human team stood in awe as their transport ship entered the massive docking bay of the Galactic Combat Academy. The space was bigger than any stadium on Earth. Hundreds of ships from across the galaxy lined the walls. Each one had a different shape, size, and design that showed the amazing variety of life in the universe. Look at that one, Taiho whispered, pointing to a ship that seemed to be made entirely of crystal. How does something like that even fly? Different laws of physics, different technologies, Minji replied, her eyes moving quickly as she tried to memorize everything she saw. We have a lot to learn. As their ship settled onto the docking platform, Jiho gathered his team for one final word. Remember why we're here, he said firmly. We represent all of humanity. Whatever happens, whatever they throw at us, we show them what humans can do. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. Standing on the platform was a welcoming party of 5 aliens. At the center stood the tallest being any of them had ever seen, nearly 3 meters high with a body covered in metallic feathers that shifted colors as it moved. 2 large wings were folded behind its back. That's Dean Navar, Yoonji whispered, having studied the Academy files during their journey. The head of the entire Academy. Dean Navar stepped forward as the humans exited their ship. His eyes, amber-colored with vertical pupils, studied each human carefully. Welcome to the Galactic Combat Academy, Dean Navar said, his translator, device changing his musical trills into English. I am Dean Navar. For 5,000 years I have guided this institution in training the finest military minds in the galaxy. Jiho stepped forward and gave a respectful bow. Thank you for the invitation, Dean Navar. We are honored to represent Earth. The Dean's feathers rippled slightly. Indeed. You have been assigned to Division Epsilon. Commander Rilik will show you to your quarters. One of the other aliens, a reptilian being with iridescent green scales, stepped forward. His face showed no emotion, but something in his posture suggested he was not pleased with this duty. Follow me, Commander Rilik said shortly. Keep up. The academy is large. As they walked through the endless corridors of the academy, the humans noticed the stares from other species. Some looked curious, others dismissive, and a few seemed openly hostile. What's Division Epsilon? Yun asked Commander Rilik as they walked. It is where we place species with developing potential, the commander replied without looking back. Taiho glanced at Jiho. They both understood what that meant. Division Epsilon was for those the Academy thought weren't good enough. Their quarters turned out to be much smaller than what they glimpsed other species receiving. The 5 humans were given a single common area with 5 tiny sleeping pods attached. These are cadet quarters, Minji observed after Commander Rilik left them. The other species we saw were getting officer accommodations. They're testing us already, Jiho said, setting down his small bag of personal items. Everything here will be a test. The next morning, they had their first class in tactical operations. The classroom was filled with 20 different species, most of whom had never seen humans before. The humans took seats at the back of the room, aware of the curious glances. Commander Rilik entered and stood at the front of the classroom. His cold eyes passed over each student before settling on the humans with obvious dislike. Today we begin with a standard exercise called Barrier Breach, he announced. Each team must penetrate a series of defensive systems to reach the objective. You will be graded on speed, efficiency, and survivability. The first teams to attempt the simulation were impressive. A group of crystalline beings similar to the ship they had seen simply phased through some of the barriers. Another team of 6-limbed blue aliens used advanced mental powers to disable security systems. When it was the humans' turn, Commander Rilik's mouth formed what might have been a smirk. Your species has barely mastered faster-than-light travel, he said as they prepared to enter the simulation room. Yet you presume to compete with civilizations that were crossing galaxies while your ancestors were still discovering fire. Jiho kept his face calm. We look forward to learning, Commander. Inside the simulation room, reality seemed to shift around them. They now stood before a massive wall with energy fields, sensor arrays, and automated weapons protecting a small building in the distance. That's our target, Yunji said, studying the defenses. These barriers are designed to stop any technology we might have. The team spent 10 minutes analyzing the situation. The other species had used advanced technology or natural abilities to overcome the barriers. The humans had neither. Any ideas? Jiho asked his team. Taiho was looking not at the barriers but at the surrounding area. Look there, he said, pointing to a small maintenance hatch near the ground, partly hidden by a projection. That has to lead somewhere. It's probably trapped, Hyun warned. Maybe, Taiho replied, but these simulations were designed for species with advanced tech or special powers. They might not expect someone to just go through a small door. While the rest of the team created a diversion to draw attention from the automated defense systems, Taiho crawled through the maintenance tunnel. It was tight, dirty, and occasionally sparked with energy. But he made it through. From inside, he was able to disable the first 3 barrier layers, allowing his team to advance. They repeated this pattern, finding physical workarounds where others would use technology, until they reached the objective. Their completion time wasn't the fastest, but they had made it through with all team members alive, something several other teams had failed to do. When they exited the simulation, the room was silent. Commander Rilik stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. You cheated, came a voice from the observation area. A tall, sleek alien with 4 arms stepped forward. That maintenance tunnel wasn't meant to be part of the exercise. Was there a rule against using it? Jiho asked calmly. Commander Relic consulted his datapad. There is not. In 300 years of this simulation's use, no team has ever attempted to use the maintenance systems. They were included only for realism. On Earth, we use what works, Yunji said. If there's a path, we'll find it. Later that day, the humans overheard a conversation as they entered the dining hall. Dean Navar was speaking quietly with Commander Relic in a corner. They bypassed the quantum barriers without any technology? The Dean was asking. Yes, Commander Relic replied, sounding troubled. They found physical solutions to technological problems. It's primitive, but effective. Perhaps, Dean Navar said thoughtfully, we should pay closer attention to these humans. That night, as the human team gathered in their small common area, they felt more confident than when they had arrived. They underestimated us today, Jiho said. They'll adjust tomorrow. The tests will get harder. Let them, Taiho replied with a grin. We'll just have to get more creative. Minji, who had been quietly working on a datapad, looked up. I've been reviewing our schedule. Tomorrow is physical training. The species we're competing against have evolved on worlds with different gravities, atmospheres. Some have natural weapons or armor. So what do we have? Hyun asked. Jiho smiled. We have what humans have always had. Adaptability, endurance, and most importantly, he looked at each member of his team, we have the one thing no other species here seems to have. We never, ever give up. Outside their quarters, the vast academy continued its normal operations. None of the advanced species inside realized that the day marked a turning point. The day humans began to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The morning alarm sounded in the human quarters, a soft chime that woke all 5 team members at once. 2 weeks had passed since their arrival at the Galactic Combat Academy. 2 weeks of surprises, challenges, and small victories. Physical endurance training today, Jiho reminded everyone as they prepared for the day. The schedule says it's a 40-hour continuous exercise. 40 hours, Taiho said with raised eyebrows. Without breaks? Most species here can go much longer without rest than humans, Minji explained. The Duranian students can stay awake for 10 days straight. The Voltar need only 1 hour of sleep per week. Yunji was doing stretches in the corner of their common room. But they haven't tested human endurance yet, she said with a small smile. We might surprise them. When they arrived at the massive training arena, hundreds of students from various species were already gathered. Commander Relic stood on a raised platform with several other instructors. Today's exercise will test your physical and mental stamina, Commander Relic announced. Combat situations rarely allow for rest or recovery. You must learn to function at peak efficiency even when exhausted. The arena transformed around them, holographic projections creating a harsh landscape of mountains, forests, and deserts. The temperature changed too, sometimes burning hot, sometimes freezing cold. Your objective is simple, Commander Relic continued. Survive and complete mission objectives as they appear. The exercise ends in 40 hours. Those who cannot continue will be removed. The exercise began, and at first the humans struggled to keep pace with the other species. The 4-armed Qurani moved with incredible speed across the difficult terrain. The rock-like Duranian students barely noticed the changing temperatures that made the humans sweat or shiver. We need to pace ourselves, Hyun told the team as they tackled their first objective, climbing a steep mountain to retrieve a marker flag. The others are showing off now, but this is a 40-hour test. Conserve energy. By the 10th hour, the first students began to drop out. The Luminari, beautiful beings of light, faded as their energy reserves depleted. By the 20th hour, even the mighty Qurani were showing signs of fatigue, their movements becoming less precise. The humans, however, had found their rhythm. They took turns leading, allowing each person short periods of lower exertion. They shared their water and food supplies efficiently. Most importantly, they kept talking, encouraging each other when exhaustion tried to claim them. At hour 30, Only half of the original participants remained. The humans were tired, their muscles ached, and their minds were foggy, but they were still moving, still completing objectives. "I don't understand," one of the instructors said to Commander Relek as they observed the exercise. "The humans have no special biological advantages. Their strength is average, their speed is average. Why are they still functioning at such high levels?" Commander Relek watched as Major Yunji Park helped Lieutenant Teho Song up a steep hill, then accepted his hand in return when her footing slipped. "They support each other," he observed, "and they seem adapted to pushing through discomfort in ways the other species are not." At hour 35, one of the Kurani students collapsed during a running exercise. Without hesitation, Jiho stopped to help, even though it cost his team points. "Why did you assist a competitor?" Commander Relek asked when Jiho finally completed the objective. "On Earth, we don't leave people behind," Jiho said simply. Even in competition, when the 40-hour mark finally arrived, only 30 students out of the original 200 were still standing. All 5 humans were among them. As they dragged themselves back to their quarters, exhausted but proud, news of their performance spread through the academy. The humans, the primitive species that many had dismissed, had outlasted students from civilizations thousands of years more advanced. "It's their evolutionary history," one of the academy scientists explained to Dean Navarre later that day. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Their bodies are designed to endure stress for long periods. More importantly, their minds are conditioned to ignore pain and fatigue when necessary." 3 days later, after the team had recovered, they faced their biggest challenge yet: the Strategic Crisis Response Simulation. This annual competition was famous throughout the academy. No team had ever achieved total victory. The simulation was specifically designed to force participants to accept defeat and minimize losses. "I've studied the previous attempts," Hyun told the team as they prepared. "Every team tries to hold fixed positions and gradually give ground as they're overwhelmed. That's what the simulation expects." "So we do something unexpected," Jiho said, looking at his team. "Ideas?" Minji had been quiet, but now she spoke up. "What if we don't just defend? What if we attack?" The others looked at her with surprise. "The scenario gives us command of planetary defense forces against an overwhelming enemy," she continued. "But defense doesn't always mean standing still." When they entered the simulation, they found themselves in a command center. Holographic displays showed a planet, similar to Earth but with 2 moons, and a massive enemy fleet approaching. "You have 12 hours before the enemy reaches orbital position," the simulation's AI announced. "Your forces consist of 30 defense platforms, 100 fighter craft, and 10 capital ships. The enemy has 5 times your numbers. Good luck." Commander Relek and several other instructors observed from outside the simulation. "Acceptable casualty rates would be 30 to 40% of your forces and civilian population," he informed them dispassionately. Captain Kim exchanged glances with his team. "That's not how humans operate," he replied. Instead of positioning their forces in a standard defensive formation, the humans did something that confused the observers. They appeared to abandon key defensive positions, creating gaps in their line. "What are they doing?" one of the instructors asked. "Their strategy makes no sense. As the enemy forces approached, they predictably moved into the gaps the humans had left. But this was exactly what the human team wanted. They weren't retreating. They were setting a trap." "Now," Jiho ordered when enough enemy ships had entered the trap zone. Their seemingly scattered forces suddenly converged from multiple directions, catching the enemy in a devastating crossfire. When that wasn't enough, they converted civilian transport ships into improvised bombers. When one of their defense platforms was critically damaged, they didn't abandon it. They overloaded its reactor and lured enemy ships close before it exploded. Hour after hour, the humans used strategies that the simulation had never encountered before. They didn't fight according to the accepted rules of space combat. They used every trick, every desperate measure that might work. "This isn't possible," Commander Relek said as he watched the simulation. The enemy forces that should have overwhelmed the defenders were being decimated. The scenario was mathematically unwinnable, Only if you play by expected rules, Specialist Kang replied, looking up from her control console with tired eyes. Humans have a saying. Necessity is the mother of invention. When survival is at stake, we get creative. When the simulation finally ended, the command center was silent. The human team stood exhausted but victorious, having achieved what no other team in the history of the Academy had done. They had defended the planet and destroyed 87% of the attacking force. The simulation controllers had to stop the exercise manually. The program wasn't designed to handle such an outcome. You cheated, one of the observers accused. Dean Navarre, who had come to witness the final hours of the simulation, shook his head. His metallic feathers rippled with what might have been admiration. No, he said. They innovated. There is a difference, and I believe we have much to learn from it. News of the humans' success in the strategic crisis response simulation spread quickly through the Academy. Students from other divisions came to look at the primitive mammals who had achieved the impossible. Some were curious, others admiring, but not everyone was happy about the humans' growing reputation. Officer Kelzar, leader of the Draconid contingent, watched the humans with cold eyes as they entered the main dining hall. The Draconids were an ancient species, tall and powerful, with scaled skin that shimmered like armor. They came from a high-gravity world which gave them natural strength far beyond human capabilities. So these are the famous humans, Kelzar said loudly as Jiho and his team passed their table. They look so soft and fragile. Jiho nodded politely and continued walking, but Kelzar wasn't finished. I hear they use tricks instead of proper combat techniques, he continued, his voice carrying across the hall. Perhaps that's all one can expect from a species that only recently learned to leave their own planet. The dining hall fell silent. Everyone knew the Draconids took matters of honor very seriously. They were an aristocratic species with strict codes of behavior. Jiho turned slowly. We use whatever works, Officer Kelzar. Results matter more than tradition. Kelzar's scales darkened with anger. Results without honor are meaningless. I challenge your team to the gauntlet. A murmur ran through the crowd. The gauntlet was an ancient tradition at the Academy, a series of brutal trials used to settle matters of honor between rival species. Captain Kim, don't accept, Commander Hyun-Lee whispered urgently. The gauntlet is designed for species with physical advantages. The Draconids evolved in a high-gravity environment. Their strength is 3 times ours. Jiho looked at his team, then back at Kelzar. We accept your challenge. 3 days later, the entire Academy gathered in the massive arena where the gauntlet would take place. Dean Navarre himself presided over the event, his metallic feathers gleaming under the bright lights. The gauntlet consists of 3 trials, Dean Navarre announced. Physical strength, environmental adaptation, and psychological resilience. Each team will select members to compete in each trial. The team with the most points at the end will be declared the victor. The first trial was exactly what the humans feared, a test of pure physical strength. Competitors had to hold increasingly heavy weights while standing on a small platform. The last one standing would win. I'll take this one, Commander Lee volunteered. I was a weightlifter before joining the military. Are you sure? Jiho asked. The Draconids are naturally stronger. Someone has to try, Hyun said with a small smile. Might as well be me. The trial began as expected. The weight started at 100 kilograms and increased by 25 kilograms every minute. Hyun held his own until the weight reached 300 kilograms. His muscles trembled with effort, sweat pouring down his face. Across from him, the Draconid competitor looked completely comfortable. At 350 kilograms, Hyun's legs gave out. He collapsed, to his knees, the weight crashing down beside him. The Draconid held on for 3 more increases before finally setting the weight down with a controlled motion. First point to the Draconids, Dean Navarre announced. Jiho helped Hyun back to their side of the arena. You did well, he said. We knew this would be the hardest trial for us. The second trial was announced, a maze navigation with changing environmental conditions. Competitors would face rapidly shifting gravity, temperature, and atmosphere. "This one's mine," said Major Yoonji Park. Lieutenant Taiho Song also stepped forward. "Two competitors?" Kelzar scoffed. "Are humans so weak they need to work in pairs?" "The rules allow up to 2 competitors per team per trial," Jiho replied calmly. "We're using the rules to our advantage. Isn't that what good warriors do?" The maze was a complex structure with transparent walls so the audience could watch. As Yoonji and Taiho entered from one side, 2 Draconid warriors entered from the other. Immediately, the environment began to change. In one section, gravity increased to 3 times normal. In another, the temperature dropped well below freezing. The Draconids moved quickly at first, their natural strength helping them push through the high gravity zones. But as the conditions kept changing, they began to slow. Their bodies, while powerful, were specialized for their homeworld stable environment. Yoonji and Taiho, however, used teamwork. When Taiho struggled in the cold zones, Yoonji helped pull him through. When Yoonji faltered in the high gravity, Taiho supported her. They moved steadily, adapting to each new challenge, their bodies recovering quickly from stress. By the halfway point, 1 Draconid had already withdrawn, unable to adapt to the rapidly changing conditions. The second pushed on alone but fell, further behind the humans. When Yoonji and Taiho reached the exit, the crowd was silent with shock. The humans had won the second trial. 1 point to humans, Dean Navarre announced. "The score is tied. The final trial will determine the victor." The final trial was the most feared, the fear confrontation. Competitors would be subjected to their species' deepest evolutionary fears while attempting to complete complex mental tasks. "I'll take this one," Jiho said. "So will I," added Minji. Kelzar himself stepped forward for the Draconids, along with his second-in-command. The 4 competitors were led to separate chambers where neural interfaces were attached to their heads. The audience could see inside each chamber through viewing screens. "Begin," Dean Navarre commanded. Immediately, the chambers changed. For the Draconids, whose ancestors evolved in hot jungles, the chamber became an ice world. Frost formed on their scales as they shivered violently. Their natural fear of cold was deeply instinctual. For the humans, the test was different. The chamber didn't change physically, but the neural interface created the sensation of complete isolation. All sounds stopped. The feeling of connection to others, to their team, to their species, to anything living, disappeared. It played on humanity's deeply social nature and primal fear of abandonment. Jiho felt his heart race as the loneliness crushed down on him. His mind told him he was completely alone in the universe, forgotten and unloved. A part of him knew it wasn't real, but the fear felt overwhelming. In each chamber, a complex targeting problem appeared. A series of moving objects that had to be tracked and calculated. Under normal conditions, it would be challenging but manageable. Under the influence of their deepest fears, it seemed almost impossible. Kelzar struggled visibly, his hands shaking from the perceived cold. His targeting solutions were erratic. Next to him, his second-in-command had already given up, curled into a ball to preserve body heat. In their chambers, Jiho and Minji were fighting their own battles. Tears streamed down their faces as the loneliness tore at their minds. But their hands continued to move, solving the targeting problems through sheer force of will. "Humans don't break when logic dictates they should," Hyun whispered as he watched his teammates. "It's our greatest strength." After 10 minutes that felt like eternity, Dean Navarre called an end to the trial. The final scores appeared on the main display. The humans had completed 87% of their targeting solutions correctly. The Draconids had managed only 62%. "The humans win the gauntlet," Dean Navarre announced. The arena erupted in surprised chatter. The Draconids had never lost a gauntlet challenge before. Later, as the human team celebrated in their quarters, there was a knock at their door. Officer Kelzar stood outside, his posture formal. "I came to offer my respect," the Draconid said, stiffly. "Your species possesses a quality we had not accounted for. You do not break when logic dictates you should. Jiho extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. After a moment's hesitation, Kelzar took it. Perhaps, the Draconid said quietly. There is something to learn from humans after all. As Kelzar left, Jiho turned to his team with a smile. One more barrier broken, he said. But the biggest challenges are still ahead of us. None of them knew just how right he was. The final test, one that would decide the fate of not just their academy standing, but potentially the relationship between humans and the galactic community, was about to begin. 3 months had passed since the humans first arrived at the Galactic Combat Academy. The day of final examinations had come. Jiho and his team sat in their common room, reviewing everything they had learned. It's hard to believe how much has changed, Yunji said. Remember when we first arrived? Everyone expected us to fail. Some still do, Hyun pointed out. We've surprised them, but that doesn't mean we'll pass the final test. Unlike other training institutions, the Academy's final examination wasn't a written test or even a simulation. It was tradition that the graduating class faced a real crisis, a carefully selected mission that would test all they had learned. The communication system in their quarters suddenly activated. All graduating candidates report to the main hall immediately, came the announcement in multiple languages. When the human team arrived at the hall, they found it buzzing with tension. Students from all divisions were gathering, many looking confused. Dean Navarre stood on the central platform, his metallic feathers reflecting the room's lights in flashes of color. Beside him stood Commander Rylick and several other senior instructors. Attention, Dean Navarre called, his voice cutting through the noise. We have received a distress call from Research Outpost 73, located at the edge of disputed space. A holographic map appeared above him, showing a region of space claimed by both the Galactic Council and a hostile group known as the Void Concordat. The outpost has 27 researchers from 12 different council species. Dean Navarre continued. They were conducting atmospheric studies on an uninhabited planet when their communications were cut off. Our last transmission indicated they were under attack. Murmurs spread through the hall. Everyone knew what disputed space meant. Any military action there could trigger a diplomatic incident or even war. Most of our senior officers are currently deployed elsewhere, Dean Navarre said. Therefore, I have made a decision. This year's graduating class will handle this crisis as their final examination. The room fell silent in shock. A real rescue mission in contested space was far more dangerous than anyone had expected. Captain Jiho Kim, Dean Navarre called out. Based on your team's exceptional performance in crisis response scenarios, you will lead this operation. Jiho stepped forward, surprised but steady. Yes, Dean Navarre. You will command a fleet of 20 ships crewed by your fellow graduates. Your mission parameters are clear. Extract the research team without triggering a diplomatic incident or open warfare. 2 hours later, Jiho stood on the bridge of the command ship looking at the officers around him. Students who had once viewed humans with suspicion now waited for his orders. Representatives from 20 different species, each bringing unique abilities and technologies. Our scans show a concordant dreadnought in orbit around the research planet, Lieutenant Taiho reported from the sensor station. It's a heavy warship with enough firepower to destroy our entire fleet. Can we call for reinforcements? Asked one of the Anarid officers, a tall being with blue skin and 4 eyes. The Anarids were known for their diplomatic skills. Reinforcements would take too long to arrive, Jiho replied, and a larger military presence could escalate the situation. Then we fight our way in, rumbled Officer Kelzar, the Draconid who had once challenged them but now stood as a reluctant ally. A quick, decisive strike? That would get us all killed, Hyun interrupted, pointing to the tactical display. Their ship outguns us 5-1. Jiho studied the tactical display, thinking hard. Standard Academy training suggested 2 options, diplomacy or direct combat. Neither would work here. We're not limited to binary choices, he said finally, looking at his diverse bridge crew. We're going to combine our strengths and do something unexpected. He turned to the communications station, where Minji was working with an Anarid officer. Can the Anarids generate false communication signals that would match concordant patterns? The Anarid's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. Yes. Our empathic abilities allow us to mimic communication patterns with proper samples. Good. And the Lumidians, Jiho continued, looking at a glowing, translucent being at the science station. Your light-bending technology, can it alter the appearance of our ships? The Lumidian pulsed with blue light. We can create illusions to disguise ships, yes, but what are you planning? And Teho, Jiho said with a smile, how close can you fly to that pulsar without radiation damage? Teho's eyes widened as he understood. Close enough to use its radiation as cover. The pulsar's output would mask our approach. Over the next hour, Jiho outlined his plan. It was unlike anything taught at the academy, a combination of techniques that would never have occurred to a single species. Using Lumidian light-bending technology, they disguised their ships as concordant vessels. The Anarid empaths generated false communication signals that the concordant would recognize as their own. Meanwhile, human pilots executed a daring maneuver, flying dangerously close to a nearby pulsar to use its radiation as cover for their approach. This is either brilliant or suicidal, Commander Relic commented from his position at the back of the bridge. He had joined the mission as an observer, but found himself impressed by the humans' plan. As they approached the planet, the Concordate Dreadnought didn't fire upon them. Their disguise was working. Now for the hard part, Jiho said. We need a small team to infiltrate the research outpost while the Dreadnought is distracted. The extraction team consisted of humans, Draconids for strength, and Anarids for communication. They landed quietly on the planet's surface, half a kilometer from the research facility. Inside the facility, they found the research team hiding in a sealed inner laboratory. Several were injured, but all were alive. We detected the Concordate ship 3 days ago, the lead researcher explained as they were escorted back to the shuttle. They want our atmospheric conversion research. It could be weaponized to make planets uninhabitable. Don't worry, Yunji assured them. We're getting you out of here. The extraction was nearly complete when alarms blared throughout the fleet. The Concordate Dreadnought had detected something amiss. They're scanning us with deep penetration sensors, Minji reported urgently. Our disguises won't hold much longer. All ships, prepare for emergency jump to light speed, Jiho ordered. Extraction team, you have 2 minutes to get airborne. The Aina shuttle launched from the surface just as the Dreadnought began moving into attack position. But by then, all 20 Academy ships were already accelerating away from the planet, their engines pushing to maximum. They're firing targeting locks, Taiho warned. Execute random jump pattern Delta, Jiho commanded. Then regroup at the meeting point. The ships vanished into faster-than-light speeds seconds before the Dreadnought's weapons could lock on. Quas. The time the Concordate realized what had happened, the Academy fleet was gone, along with the researchers and all their data. 3 days later, the graduating class stood in the Academy's Grand Hall. The rescued researchers stood to one side, safe and grateful. Dean Navarre addressed the assembled dignitaries from across the galaxy. When we first admitted humans to this academy, the dean said, his voice carrying through the hall, many questioned the wisdom of including such a young species. Today, I submit that the question we should have asked was not whether humans were ready for the galaxy, but whether the galaxy was ready for humans. He turned to where Jiho and his team stood at attention. Captain Jiho Kim, Major Yunji Park, Lieutenant Taeho Song, Commander Hyun Lee, and Specialist Minji Kang, you and your classmates have demonstrated the true purpose of this academy, not to follow traditions blindly, but to find new ways to maintain peace and protect life throughout the galaxy. The 5 humans received their commissions as the first human officers in the Galactic Defense Force. As they stood on the platform, representatives from dozens of species applauded, some enthusiastically, others more reservedly. This is just the beginning, Captain Kim told his team as they looked out at the stars through the hall's massive windows. They've seen what 5 humans can do. Wait until they meet the rest of us. Beyond the academy, the vast galaxy waited. A place of wonder and danger, opportunity and challenge. Humanity had proven itself not just worthy of joining the galactic community, but capable of leading it to new heights through adaptability, creativity, and unwavering determination. The galaxy would never be the same again. The end.